Nicole, welcome to About Her. I'm so excited to have you here and to learn about your wisdom. You're working as a tattoo artist, and you told me you're doing energy work, Reiki, and I think like the combination, as I told you before, is like super interesting to me. And I would love for you to share your journey to whatever point you feel comfortable with, how you came to combine these modalities and how everything like came to be what it is right now.
Absolutely. Hi, it's really great to be here. Thank you for having me. So essentially my journey was actually very much rooted in a health journey, first and foremost. For most of my childhood and into my young adult life, I was actually battling undiagnosed Lyme disease and endometriosis alongside digestive disorders that were coincided with those. And, you know, I started getting tattooed. When I was 19 years old, I started getting tattooed, and I very quickly learned that it was a really great way for me to almost like reclaim the pain that I was experiencing. And it became very cathartic for me. It helped me to reconnect with the body that I felt so disconnected and hated by, basically. Um, and so collecting tattoos became a way for me to feel better in the body that was constantly fighting me. Um, it was a very long time until I had actually gotten any diagnosis, and it had actually occurred. It was the year that COVID happened, so in 2020, so not very long ago. Even though it does feel ages ago at this point.
I know what you mean.
It's like we've been through 17,000 lifetimes in a matter of a few short years.
True.
Um, but in that journey, after, going through my diagnosis, I was in the middle of my tattoo apprenticeship at that point. Um, and I had just a year or so prior, I had gotten Reiki done for the very first time. And it was just kind of one of those moments where I was just at such a loss and I was just so fed up, and nothing that doctors were doing for me was helping. And I was just like, screw it. I gotta try anything and everything at this point because I feel like dying almost every day. Um, and when I first got in the Reiki, I was like, wow, I actually felt some relief for the first time in my life. Um, And so that's kind of where I got introduced to energy work in general. And before I got into tattooing, before any of that, like when I first got out of school, when I first got out of high school, I went to college. I was studying biology and math, and so I was always a very logic-based person. And I eventually just like decided that it wasn't for me, and I tried, doing art for a little while, and I just didn't want to continue going to school, so I left. I had pursued music for a while and everything too. I've lived a million lifetimes myself. um, but where was I going with this? Uh,
The way you get introduced to Reiki, you said that it was
yeah,
like profound experience.
yeah, yeah. So I'll just circle back to that because I don't know what tangent I was going on. Um, but it was, yeah, as soon as I had gotten that first Reiki session, I was just like, wow, this is something else. This is fascinating. And I had fallen off of it for a bit. It was just kind of like, wow, cool. And then my life was like going through these changes with starting my apprenticeship. And I was just like adjusting to new jobs because I had to switch things around. And I was just like getting sicker and sicker, and the pain was just getting worse and worse. And then I had gotten my diagnosis. Um, and that year, when I started actually tattooing people, I was starting to recognize that the days that I didn't feel good when I was tattooing, and I was just learning, so it was already stressful enough as it was permanently marking people when you're figuring it out with very little guidance from your mentor. Um, and that was part of it. It's like these people knew that they were signing up for an experiment, right? Because they're like, oh, you're an apprentice, you're learning. Like, this might not come out great, but it's free. Um, so I would start to notice days that I was not feeling super great, when I was having bad days, or even days because I was, I was going through a lot at the time. So, I was still relying on other substances like alcohol and marijuana, and days that I would come in hungover, or days where I was in a flare up, I would recognize how that energy was affecting not only the experience of the session, but also the tattoo itself. And, I was recognizing that the inability to be present was a direct effect on the process. And one day, this wonderful woman named Jax walked into the shop, and she was looking for like a cover up. She had like some finger tattoos that she wanted to cover up. She wanted to have a thunderbird across her whole hand to cover it up. And I was excited. I had just gotten licensed too, so I was like a little bit more experienced at this point, and I was like, yeah, let's go, let's do this. And she was actually a shamanic Reiki master, and was running one of the collective where I first had received Reiki for that first time. And it had been like a good year and a half since I had had that Reiki session at this point. And as like part of my gratuity, she offered me a session. And so I had gotten back in there, and I was just hooked. I was like, yeah, let's keep doing this. And then she was a teacher also. So I started going to events that she had been hosting, spiritual ceremony events that she had been hosting. Another woman who works with her, Amy, who's also one of my teachers, would host cacao ceremony. So I just started like deep diving into this stuff because I had felt so lost for such a long time that finding these alternative therapies and these alternative like methods of healing, like it really helped me reclaim myself and feel better, truly feel better without having to take a pill, which half the time those didn't even work.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Isn't it that we like taking, so many of us taking pills
Yeah.
for such a long time, and the side effects are big and they're not even working, but we
Yeah,
might have not been introduced to some other modalities. So
absolutely.
amazing that she walked into your shop and like opened that door for you.
Absolutely. And so yeah, that was literally the gateway. Um as soon as I had the opportunity, when she was offering Reiki level 1, I jumped on it. I was like, yes. And I didn't even really know how I was going to incorporate it at that point. I just knew that I wanted to learn more about it, and I wanted to be able to keep my energy right so that I could show up better for my clients. Um, because as we were talking about before we were recording briefly, I'll bring this up for the listeners. Um, when I first started getting tattooed, not every tattoo I got was a good experience. There was either ego involved, or, the design didn't really come out the way I wanted to, and I didn't know how to advocate for myself, which is fairly common. And I've had a lot of clients who've had similar experiences. And seeing that transfer of energy carry through for years, because you're wearing something that reminds you of that experience. Every time you see it, you remember who did it, where you were, what you were doing, how you were feeling, how they treated you. And there's a profound impact with that. It doesn't go away. Those memories don't go away. It's indelible, and it carries with you, and that energy carries with you. And in learning that, that's where I wanted to make sure that I was showing up from a place of integrity, from a place of neutrality and understanding and care and compassion. And so at first, the Reiki level 1 was a way for me to be able to check in with my own energy and to be able to recalibrate my own energy, especially working with people for long periods of time, hours most often. When you're hands on with them, you're transferring energy, you're in each other's auric fields. So I had gotten there. And then one morning during meditation, because I had started mindfulness practice probably, along the same timeline of the rest of this, especially through the COVID lockdowns, because I didn't know what else to do with myself. And I had spiraled for a while. And it was like that mindfulness is kind of what really helped me like come back to center. And in meditation one morning, a spirit basically whispered in my ear, like, hey, Reiki and tattooing. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I don't know how I would do that. And then I saw one of my mentors. She was essentially advertising. She had made these little necklaces and bracelets out of crystals, and she was advertising them as being infused with Reiki. And I was like, infused with Reiki? I was like, I got to learn more about that. So I went back and I did level 2 as soon as I was able to. And I was like, yeah, I got to learn how to infuse the ink with Reiki. Like, how do I do that?
Amazing.
So yeah, I went and I did that and I learned level 2. And then I was just like, screw it, I'm just going to get master at this point. So I am a Reiki master now. And it has absolutely been life-changing, and it has helped me really step into my power in ways in which I know that I'm here doing a service to humanity and I'm not draining from it any longer. So, yeah.
I have goosebumps like you're telling this. And what I think is so beautiful is how tangible this all is, because essentially, I love like zooming out to the big picture. Essentially, what you just described is happening in every work, in every interaction we do. But normally it's just so unconscious. But like you described, I love that picture, and transferring it to like any other communication is like the moment you had a bad day or you felt like not present, that affected your work, that affected that energy of that person, of course, because you're working on them in that moment. Like you described with the tattoo you got that you felt out of alignment with as soon as you had it. And I think we're all doing that, but mostly we're unconscious, or maybe even if like it's coming out there into consciousness, it's like, no, well, no big deal. And normally it's not visible. So you can like very easily push that away and not take responsibility for your energy or what you're doing in life. And I think what's so beautiful with your journey is that it's so visible and that it is so clear. You can like, you really have a way of seeing evidence if you wish to see, like, is that a good day? You can see it in the work you're doing.
Absolutely.
Maybe more than someone who is working in an office. But even then, like the way you show up on the phone, the way you show up in your emails, the way you, whatever, communicating to others, it's the same thing. We're always transferring the energy and becoming conscious of that. And like you say, wanting to be of support to others and not be part of the draining of energy that's happening all over the place so quickly that it's like unimaginable how much sources of drainage there could be. That's like this shift. I think it's how beautiful that she walked in, that you grasped that opportunity, that it helped you personally with your healing, and that now you can transfer that to others. I think that's like the most amazing way of synchronicities.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's just one of those things that if you're going through your journey and you can't figure out a way to show up and kind of like lead from experience and compassion so that others can be exposed to what's possible, then what are you even doing? Then it's all in vain at that point. I mean, it's like you can never tell anyone what to do or how to do anything or how to go about their life, but you can share your experience and plant seeds, and it's up to them what they do with it, if they water it or not. Um, but I'm a firm believer that, especially like as awakening is becoming more common for people, and we're seeing it more on a global scale where every year there's more and more people kind of like stepping into their power and recognizing that, hey, the way that we do things isn't really how things should be done. Um, and the more that this happens, the more that we need people like you and I to help show people what to do. Because there's no crash course on how to connect with your spirit. There's no crash course.
I'd love to have one when I started. I would love to.
I mean, the whole point of the human experience is we come here and we agree to forget what we know on our soul level. We agree to come in and wipe the slate clean and see how we do this time around. It's all a test.
Yes, it's all a test. I love that you said it because I've studied this morning and I've listened to actually like 1 hour lesson that says exactly that. It's all a test we're learning, and we need to come back to our power to say like, oh, I'm earning the light or the knowledge or the awakening. I'm earning this energy and not I'm getting it for free. That's the whole point for us coming here to like learn to be creators ourselves. And it makes so much sense. And for me, like it was a big aha. And still I see so many people being the complete victim to their experience here and totally not stepping into co-creating their life and becoming empowered. But because it's so, maybe because 100, because it's like maybe because you've just been programmed like that, or it's easier, or it's known, but whatever it is, like this coming out of this, like life is happening to me and I need to kind of deal with it. Like you said, with how you felt with your body not supporting you when you were like feeling sick. I had that too, and it was like when it's going away, you very easily fall into that victim mode. But coming out of that is the point in life, like finding your way to work with it and not against it, and then seeing the moment you embrace it, it sometimes vanishes, or at least like the pain decreases. So I think it's such an interesting journey and how intertwined everything is. And I like you say, the way we can infuse energy into our work, literally into the pictures that you're drawing on other people permanently, or through the way we're communicating, the way you write messages. I was in fashion my first life, so the way I sew clothes and the colors I picked and the fabrics, that is also infusing energy unconsciously or consciously, but you are like being a part of their lives for a certain period of time, and that's actually quite a big issue.
Absolutely. It sure is. And it's like once they walk out the door, it's with them. Like you can't lose it, you can't break it. It's in your skin. Like it's part of who you are. And it's kind of wild too, because honestly, it's like when you think about it, go back to the roots of even more ancient ceremonial tattooing, it is a bloodletting ceremony. It is very spiritual. You're literally releasing stagnation through getting tattooed. You transmute that energy through getting tattooed. And so if you don't have somebody who's consciously helping you to actually like get grounded and rooted in that process, it could be detrimental, you know? I've noticed that especially when I do the Reiki tattoos, there's moments where, my clients, they're receiving Reiki. Like, I infuse the pigments and then I allow myself to remain an open channel throughout the entire session. So it might not be like we're hitting all your chakras type of Reiki session, but it's still pouring into them throughout over the course of 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 or 7 hours. And there are definitely shifts that happen for people during that period of time. I've had a client who I've been working on her throat chakra. She came to me because she learned of what I do. And she's had issues with activating her throat and her voice throughout her entire life. So it was a very powerful piece for her to be doing that. And so she actually wanted to get the Visuddha symbol with flower of life around the rest of her throat, which it's an ongoing project because it's very intricate. And it's a very sensitive and difficult area to work. And during her first session, we had to take a moment so that she could just cry because she was just releasing all of the pain of feeling like she couldn't speak most of her life. And I had taken the time with her to put my machine down and just direct Reiki for probably like a good 10 to 15 minutes. And then she was able to like recenter, regroup. We were able to get back in there, get more work done. But it's been fascinating. So this woman, she lives in Texas and I'm in Arizona, so she has to drive to me and travel, right? We met on TikTok, and it's really cool because I can see how she's been stepping into her power ever since. And she came back for her second session. We have one more session left, but she came back for her second session. And even after that, she was like starting to actually speak on camera. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. This is amazing.
How amazing to be part of that journey and to like really see how it's unfolding after your work, after the energy that you've exchanged.
Yeah, it's really beautiful and it's profound to see the shifts that people go through. And it's not just the Reiki tattoos either, because another one of the services that I offer, it's like a ceremonial experience where we go in kind of open-ended, and I set the stage where we ground ourselves with some meditation. Essentially I guide through just like a very private session where I actually work with cards too as divination tools. So I read tarot. I've taken courses in tarot. So I read tarot and I also work with oracle cards. And that experience is for the kind of person who, is great with just like, let's practice the art of surrender with this. Let's just see how this manifests. Because the beauty and the magic in that is seeing what messages come through for them with where they are, seeing what comes up for them. And then we craft the tattoo concept based on what we learned during that session. So it's a spiritual ceremony, but it doubles as a consultation in a way where they don't know what they're getting until we're in it.
Wow. I love
and even that, like, I'll even infuse the Reiki into those as well. And the imagery that comes up for people and the ways that it resonates, it's just really, it's like extra powerful at that point because you're infusing the symbology and it's not just the idea that they came in with. It's something that was divinely guided.
like thinking back to my own tattoo experience, it certainly was a moment, and for everyone I know who has a tattoo as well, it always felt like a moment of wanting to shed skins or wanting to step into a new version of self or wanting to let go of something really heavily. And there's always this moment of like transformation in it. So I just imagine not being led by just the conscious part or just like this, I want to get rid of this stuff or I want to move into blah, 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 but having like this piece of divinely assisted crafting of the artwork, how much more powerful would that be compared to like, I look at my tattoo every day and it gives me, I'm 10 years old, it gives me energy every day. And I connect to that every day. Like you said, when we spoke before, I remember who's done it, how I felt, how the experience was, where the shop was. Of course, that is with me every day. So I imagine like having a ceremony and really crafting that in a way and with a person who gets how deep that is. And I feel that for so many people, I think like, oh my God, there could be an even more transformative experience than tattooing in itself is, but with someone who is like aware of the massiveness of the work. Because you can also go in like half drunk and say like, please tattoo a caterpillar on my hand. Of course you can, yeah. And maybe it's transformative too. But there are like worlds in my imagination between these two ceremonies. And I think it's so beautiful that now we're in a time, we touched upon awakening before a bit, we're in a time where more and more people get that and get the value of such a conscious work and of like divine channel flowing through you and assisting you in a process that can help them step up, like you said, opening throat or being more confident, which I feel tattooing is normally is a nice side effect of it, but in
Absolutely.
a way that is even more meditative, more conscious, more mindful than just the picture.
Totally. And even then too, like you bring it up being meditative. I mean, when you're getting tattooed, you actually like have to get connected to your breath. You have to, especially for more sensitive areas. Like you have to make sure you're staying rooted in your body, you're staying present, you're breathing through it. It is meditative. It is an act of alchemy and transmutation.
So beautiful. What a different way of looking at it. So, like here in Germany where I live, there was a big shift about like 20 years ago, 15 years ago of nobody having a tattoo that is visible to like almost everyone having one. So it's really interesting how fast and how big that this has grown. And when I think about like how many people I know who have at least one tattoo, but I've never heard of an experience that is that conscious, that mindful. So I would love to have that when I was getting it. But well, I think it's so amazing that this awakening gives us the stage to perform things like Reiki in an environment that you could maybe describe as rough as a tattoo studio, depending on who's in it, you know?
Right.
So I love that there is no contradiction anymore and that things are coming together and you can do both. And you don't have to like do the either or, but you can like just combine forces and tools, which is what I told you. I would love to ask you, like the tools you're using, you touched on them, but the way you connect through the Reiki, through your artwork, with yourself, with the universe, and how you, the way that empowers you. I would love you to like, yeah, say whatever comes to mind on that topic.
Oh, so what's another way to rephrase that? Because I'm not really sure how to answer. Can you rephrase the question?
Yes. I just thought like maybe I was so excited that I wasn't being clear. So, okay.
No, that's okay.
Let's see. What are you using? Like, what is the process you're using to get that conscious, to get that open for
Okay.
the energy flowing through you for like either yourself or when you're doing artwork on another one? Like, what is your process, the tools you're using to like connect to the divine?
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so I always make sure that I get meditation in before I, get into work for the day. I'll often just like I honestly keep to myself a lot to help keep my energy clear. I'm kind of a professional hermit sometimes. But I mean, basically like meditation, mindfulness, all of those things are stuff that I practice for myself regularly. I'll work with cards for myself to make sure that I'm keeping my thoughts clear, journaling, all of that stuff. When I get in to the shop before doing a session like this, like for the most part, I have like a Palo Santo spray. I'll like make sure that I'm just like clearing the air in the space, making sure that everything feels good. Um, if I'm doing a private session before they even get there, I'll open up the Reiki and like bless the space. And essentially, like I just tried it my damnedest to just focus on my breathing as well while I'm doing this, and especially like through the tattoo. It's helpful to do that because it helps to steady everything. Um, and so like I'll even take deep breaths throughout the session, like slow, long, deep breaths, keep myself present. Um, I mean, I will ask for divine guidance. I will essentially ask for support to ensure that I can provide the best tattoo possible for that day. Um, and yeah, even before that, I'll like be very mindful of what I listen to when I go into work. Um, on days that I'm just doing regular tattooing, it's a little bit different. But when I'm showing up for the energy work, I'm listening to like hand pan drums or Reiki music or stuff that's like solfeggio frequencies. So I'm trying to keep everything clear so that it's like I'm not carrying something that I shouldn't be carrying into the
Yeah.
space. Um, so yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yes, totally, totally. I love like getting to know processes that people use like almost like routines, or it feels like a ceremony to me too. The way you prepare yourself energetically for a session, I think it's really profound because, like you said, everything that from you waking up to you going to the studio to you working on maybe someone else before you have that session, there is this accumulation of energy from all over the place, and to have ourselves as clear as we can and as maybe even detached as we can so that we can provide the work for that person in that moment and not like hang on to a conversation from before or like us stressing because we missed a bus or whatever it is. Like it's within that moment, and so it's within that energy and that tattoo in your work. So I love that you're having like these many practices to kind of, I call it emptying out. I do it in the evening. I kind of need to empty out of all the energies of other people, however beautiful the conversation was, to come back to myself. And in the morning, it's the same thing. How can I, be a clear channel, not bring my own stuff in, and be there for that person for however that means, whatever that means in that moment, which is so differently all the time.
Yeah, it's just very important. I guess like it's one of those things where it has just spilled over into my daily life so much at this point that I just move through everything with intention as much as possible. Like even the way that I drive myself to work now, it's totally different than the person I was years ago.
Isn't that
Like,
amazing? Like how much can shift, how much is
yeah,
possible in every daily little action.
I used to have the worst road rage. I grew up in New England, um, in Massachusetts. Uh, it's very densely populated. The roads are, it's very like new world, but still European like road systems where they're all over the place from, having horse-drawn carriages back in the day. And it's very densely populated. And there's just people who are angry all the time because they're all rushing around and everyone's in each other's energy and they don't even realize it. It just amplifies all of that. It's just very dense there. And I used to have the worst road rage. And I used to take pride in it because that's what you did in Massachusetts. You
It's
had road rage. You were
part of
called a
the
masshole.
self-image. Yeah.
It was like a rite of passage to be a masshole. That's what we called ourselves. And I've gotten to the point where I'm generally unfazed in the car every now and then. every now and then I'm like, oh, what are you doing? But it's like, instead of flipping people off, I end up throwing heart hands at them. Like, if they're like being, aggressive with me and I'm just driving, minding my business, and they're like honking or something, and I'm like, I'm not going slow. Like, you can go around me. I'll just hope you have a nice day.
And how different the energy is, isn't it? Because like you can take on that energy from the person, that like, anger or frustration or stress, and have that for yourself. But then you have to carry it as well. Or you can find your way, which is not easy, by the way, but you can find your way to say like, well, I don't know what this person is going through. Like, please go. But you're not bothering me. You're not triggering me. I remain stable within my energy.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And we're not perfect. It's always a practice. There's always going to be moments that, try to trigger us and test us. And it's just, that's part of being a human. Like, and having those feelings isn't a bad thing. Like, experiencing anger is healthy. We're supposed to. We just shouldn't take it out on other people. We should deal with it ourselves. But in that too, just having grace and coming back to ourselves, and like, even if we do get triggered, we react a way that we're not really proud of. It's recognizing that and changing that pattern within ourselves to be like, oh, hey, that, like, consciously choosing to say, hey, that wasn't really the best way for me to react. How can I be better?
Mm-hmm. Just for next time, not like blame game or be shameful about your behavior, your reaction before, but just say like, okay, oh my God, you're having a cat.
Oh yeah, she's here. She's made herself very aware.
No, but like, I think it's such a shift in energy to be aware that we don't have to feel guilty all the time. There's so much guilt, there's so much shame in people. I know for myself, I carry loads and loads of shame or resentment from this or past lives, whatever. But there's so much to carry around with, and we can learn to let go of that and just say like, okay, well, didn't do that perfectly. Would love to not do that again. Why is this in my movie? Why is this showing up? What can I learn? And then like go through that experience of learning, but without like needing to punish myself in the process. Therefore, I'm learning faster, and therefore it doesn't have to happen again, or happens in a different level. I feel things come back, but you have a different perspective on them, and you can see like, okay, well, this time I even reacted better. This time I now have this tool that I can use. So there's always this learning in it if you wish to take it.
Always. There's always learning in everything. And it's about taking that personal responsibility over your actions. And essentially with doing that, you are putting down the victimhood mentality, because you're recognizing like, hey, whatever I'm experiencing right now, yeah, this might suck, whatever it is, but there's a lesson here. What can I do to grow? What can I do to learn from this? And that's where you get your power back.
Yeah. I feel like I would love to see like if you experience that too. I feel very much resistance in people when they first start with that concept of going out of victimhood mentality and like taking 100% responsibility from the illnesses that you have, to the fight with your spouse that you have, to the challenges at work, whatever, to say like, okay, everything's a mirror, everything's here as a lesson. That's a hard pill to swallow at first.
It is.
Like, very uncomfortable to say like, do you mean I have this issue because I, did something wrong? No, but there's a lesson. So it's not for punishment, but it's a lesson for you to learn. And as soon as you learn it, that's like my perspective on it. It can go. You can release it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, like even recently, like I had an experience where I was falsely accused of theft by 2 different people within a week.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, wait, what is this trying to tell me?
Yeah, why is this coming up?
And like, yeah, I was upset and I was angry. I was like, why are you accusing me of stealing? And it was like, it was one of them was my coworker, and like it was just something, he put it in a different drawer in his desk. I'm like, why would you assume that I stole it from you, first of all? But I was starting to be like, what is going on? Like there's something happening here, because it became a pattern, right? It started to show itself as a pattern, and I'm like, what is this reflecting within my own shadows at this point? What is happening? And I started doing some research on like what that means for, some shadow work and stuff. And essentially it came down to like a being like not heard, and feeling like a more tied to abandonment wounds and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, no, I've been processing those for quite a while. Still got more work to do. I forget like where I was going, but essentially, yeah, it's when you're starting to realize to take responsibility. It doesn't happen right away, and it's not easy. And you have to go through many ego deaths to get through that, for certain. Like, you really have to break yourself, because our egos get so protective, like to a fault. And yeah, just starting to like realize like, oh, victimhood. Yeah, it's triggering as fuck to be like, oh, you're in victimhood mentality. I'm in victimhood mentality. What do you mean? I'm not of course it's not me. It's never me. It's the world. It's the evil people.
Always
It's
the way.
all of this stuff. It's, my abusive parent, or like this, that, the other thing, or yeah, which obviously those people have their faults too. They shouldn't be projecting what they're projecting on us.
So true.
But we can't control what they do. We can only control how we respond to it. And I feel like for me, that was kind of the part that clicked.
Mhm.
Was like, okay, I think I'm getting what this whole, not being in victimhood mentality means. It means taking responsibility for how I choose to respond to what happens, because that's all that I can control.
And then you can shift out of victimhood mentality in an
Yes,
instant if you,
absolutely. Because
if you mean it.
that in and of itself is immediately taking your power back. Immediately. When you make that switch, it clicks in your head. You're like, wait a second, how am I responding? That's when you reclaim your power. The word responsibility, which I can't take credit for this. This is one of my spiritual mentors. He's the one who, dropped this nugget in my head, and I continue to pay it forward because it's so helpful, is responsibility. The etymology of it, you break down the word, it literally says the ability to respond. Your responsibility is your ability to respond to what happens for you.
Beautiful. I so
And
love that. And I feel it's making this whole like, what, I'm responsible for what happens in my life a lot easier, because you can realize, like, if you wish, you can realize it's for you. Everything is happening for you. One of my mentor always says, like, the moment you realize that everything is happening for you, even the most bad, uncomfortable experiences are coming from the divine God, love, however, the universe, and therefore they are good. The moment you realize that, you can let go of so much resistance. You can take on that responsibility because it's for your best. And that is so hard for so many people, including myself. There are parts of me
yeah,
where I'm still like, no. And then there are parts where it's easier. So it definitely is like an ongoing process. But once you catched it, it's coming back more often, and you get that empowerment more often.
yeah, it's that pattern interruption. It's the moment that you can break that pattern, that old pattern that no longer serves you, that you can start to create a better practice. And I mean, that's why the word practice is used, because you're never going to achieve perfection. We're human.
Yeah. Another one of those like paradigms that I love to see breaking is being perfect. It's so unnecessary. No one's perfect. It's not the point, you know?
Exactly.
People
It's
tell me
like,
like, oh, I need to master this. I need to like be perfect. It's no, you're not. You need to enjoy the process. Find your way to be empowered in it.
yeah, it's like Don Miguel Ruiz. You're perfectly imperfect, exactly as you are.
Yes. And it's so hard for people to take that, to accept the perfection that we have because of, I don't know how many like wounds and unworthiness issues we carry, like all different, but then again, not so different in us to say like, well, yet I am okay the way I am. Like you shared before, I love that story from the woman who was coming to you to activate her throat through the artwork and to like really work on letting things in, allowing herself to be seen, be heard, allowing herself to speak. I think like this transformation, this healing to see like, okay, I have something to say, or I am worthy of being heard, being seen, being fully here. I don't have to make excuses, or I don't have to wear a mask to be appreciated. That's such a huge shift that brings you back into empowerment. And I don't think that it matters where we start. I think it matters that we start. And it could be through a Reiki session, or that could be through journaling, or that could be through seeing like, is that even mine that I'm angry about, sad about? You know, like really seeing where you are and where you not are. But it all comes back to like this connection to ourselves, and therefore the empowerment that you can find in there.
Oh, totally. And this just kind of popped in my head too, as you were saying, like what you were just saying with, is that even mine? Like, I don't know if you have dove into human design at all.
I'm studying it right now. So
Yeah,
interesting that you're mentioning it. Such a game changer.
It really is. It's been life-changing. My experiment has been so crazily profound. It's just beautiful. But when I read the figure that more than it's like roughly 50% of people have an open head center, our thoughts are like half the time not ours. Literally, they're not. They're something for someone else.
And for me, like I have a closed, I have a defined head, but I have an open emotional center. And when I read this, that explained my whole life in like 3 words, because it's not like, oh my God, I've taken on so many stuff from others and I felt it and I'm really good at that. So I'm transmuting that. It has its purpose, but I always thought it was mine. And the moment I realized it's not mine, I don't have to carry it. I can if I want. It's my choice, but I don't have to. It was like, da, 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 da. You know, it's like such a like beautiful, dramatic moment to say, like, oh, it's actually not me.
Yeah. And then for me too, learning like, because I'm a manifester, so I don't have a defined sacral. I was like, holy crap. No wonder there's like literally stretches of time where I'm just like, I am so tired and I don't know why I can't get out of it.
And if you don't know, you might beat yourself up and say like, well,
Yeah.
to like everyone else, I need to know. But you can't because it's not your nature. Yeah. For me too, this was like, I was resisting it at first because I didn't like the name. And I thought like, well, design, what do you mean? Like everyone's unique. Where is the design? I didn't like that. And when I like released the resistance and dove in, I found it to be the other way around. The first ever system that I've studied that is not putting me into a box, that is actually like helping me to see who I am and release judgment about different actions or ways I feel, so that I'm not putting myself into a box and saying that's right, that's wrong, or whatever, but to say like, oh, well, I'm a generator, so I have a sacral, but my mother is a manifester, and of course, like I grew up with her. I've took some of her like, you know, ways of doing things, which actually are not fitting for me. And it's nobody's fault.
Right.
It's just, how did you know? So now I realize, okay, she's doing that because of this. And I'm doing that because of this. And I have so many other friends. What came to my mind when you said you're a manifestor is one dear friend of mine. She said like when she learned that she's a manifestor too. And she learned she's here to initiate, but not to like finish the whole process and to like be that builder. that was such a relief because she felt she needed to be the builder, and it was the hardest thing for her. And I always felt I needed to initiate, and I'm really not good at initiating, you know? I'm
Right.
good at responding. But if I initiate, normally it goes wrong. So that is so valuable.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's like, it's tough being a manifester because we still live in a society where we have to continue to produce in order to create income at this point. You know, hopefully that's shifting where we can kind of find other ways to do that. Like, I'm starting to figure out ways to get some passive income where I can initiate something and just put it out there and let it be. I don't have to worry about it anymore. But what's interesting is it's like it does carry into kind of the services that I'm offering, because yeah, I have to be generating the work, but what's really kind of interesting is, especially when I'm doing like the energetic stuff for people, I'm initiating them in their healing. So I was like, when I had that realization, I was like, holy crap, because I started doing this before I knew my human design. And I was like, wow, that really resonates. And
You're initiating the healing, and then it's their stuff to generate.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's cool too, because even like cognition, so like I have nervous touch.
Mm-hmm.
And so thriving in a buzzy, energetic environment. And I literally hold a machine that vibrates and buzzes.
You've done so beautifully when picking your job.
It's just so cool how it's like, wow, it's just so much confirmation and validation that this is so in alignment. It's crazy. It's just so great.
It's kind of like a confirmation that you're on the right path, isn't it? It's like even if you didn't knew before, and then you realize like, oh, and the other way around, if there's some hiccups, if there's some resistance or some areas where you really feel stuck and you are able to like work with your human design, kind of interpret it even to a like basic level. It doesn't matter how deep you go in, even the basics, to see like, okay, that's maybe why it's not working. That's maybe why I'm having such a hard time in that field, because I'm doing it like another design is supposed to, or I'm like kind of neglecting my own energy flow, and therefore of course there's more resistance. But that doesn't mean I'm wrong. It just means there's a better way for me. Which I think is like, so for me that was like the biggest relief, because my first, I shared before, like my first career was in fashion, and although I had a mother who like raised me lovingly and without any you need to look like whatever to be valuable, I was in there and I had the very firm conviction that if I didn't look like one of the models that I was making dresses for, I'm not valuable, which I didn't. Yeah, you know. So releasing this, like, you don't have to be like someone else, but you can be yourself, and you're perfect that way. That was such a big shift for me to see that you don't have to have this concept. There's nothing wrong. It just maybe isn't the right environment for you, like you said, or it is the right environment for you, and then you're thriving, and therefore like, okay, yeah, it's kind of like where I'm meant to be.
Yeah, it's fascinating too, because when I got into the human design, I was kind of like struggling with workflow, and the shop that I was at was very sleepy and very quiet. And, you know, nobody was ever there all the time. They would just kind of come and go as they had appointments. I was the only one who would show up for a regular schedule, because I figure, well, you can't catch fish if you don't go fishing. And it was just like, it was just beating my head against the wall. I was like, I don't know why. Like, I'm not magnetizing clients. Like, I don't know what's going on. And I'm also, so my environments is kitchen.
Me too.
I'm dry kitchens, which is fascinating because now I live in the desert.
I'm hot.
Cool. And I had the realization, I was like, wow, it's literally this type of shop. It's killing my energy.
How profound.
And it was like the moment that I got into another place where, you know, everyone was there when we were open because they wanted to be there. And they had appointments and people were in and out of the door. And it was like, cool, now I'm thriving again. And then even when I moved out here to Sedona, the first shop that I was in was kind of a little bit sleepier, even though she told me that it wasn't going to be. And I was like, oh, here we are again. I'm hitting these walls because it's a sleepy environment.
It's not your environment. You're not thriving in there. Yeah.
And now I'm in a street shop, literally like in the heart of Sedona, where there's tourists walking in all the time. And I'm thriving again.
Cool.
So
it's so helpful to know these because you like from the outside you can tell like, well, you're in the shop all day every time, so there is nothing changed, but it has because it's not just you, what you do, but it's also your environment. It's also the energy of your environment. So there's so much to it that it's like a bit more detail to look into, and for that you need that reflection time that we started with to say like, okay, why is this coming up? What is my test here? What should I need to learn?
yeah.
And therefore you can then shift and you can go to a shop that is like really vibrant and where everyone is always coming in and going out, and you feel that this is giving you your energy. So it's perfect. For someone else, that might be the most draining thing in the world.
Of course.
Yeah. And then they need a more sleepy shop. So there's nothing right or wrong. But if you find it, I feel like there's an immediate, this is immediate energy coming through as a confirmation.
Yeah, it's just very validating. Having, again, like these tools that we can use for self-awareness, I think are so important. And without these two, like my journey would be a lot slower. We're very blessed that we have access to so much information. And like, I honestly feel like I'm always learning something about myself and deep diving into things like with, self-reflection tools because they're so accessible. Like I'll go through, as a manifestor, I'll jump around. So I'll go through periods where I'm like hyper consuming human design. And then I'll be like, oh, I'm going to hyper consume numerology, or like, oh, I'm going to hyper consume astrology this month. Like,
I'm laughing because I'm the same and I'm not supposed to, but that's something that I've took on from my family, and it's like a process, but I love that.
Yeah, it's just funny.
Yeah, it's funny and it's so valuable because the way we learn through these tools and also through taking on like actions that maybe are not meant for us, but we're learning through them. So it's a great way to get to know yourself better.
And that's why it's an experiment.
Yeah.
You see what works, you see what doesn't work.
Yeah.
But you're given the mindfulness and the consciousness to be able to use discernment in the way that you move through life and what you experience. And having that is so valuable. It's like almost impossible to not be in alignment and conscious.
Oh my God.
Or at least on the way.
I feel like I would love to ask you like 100 questions, but I feel like this is the perfect sentence to finish this up, because I don't know what to ask the next question for that could be any better than that statement. Thank you so much. Oh my God. Yes, it is. I totally agree. Wow. I thank you so much for your wisdom.
Thank you for having me.
And for that amazing conversation and that like combining of these tools. I think it's like when you talk about it, I feel it's so natural to do all these things, like to do the ceremony and the Reiki and then tarot and then like craft a tattoo and then get tattooed. I think like, how could it be any other way? So how amazing.
Yeah. It's really just kind of bringing it back to its roots and making it my own, know? Because it used to just be a ceremonial thing.
Yeah.
Before,
commerce,
the Navy and traditional American tattooing came in, which I love. I do love it. And I love the history of it. And I love a good traditional tattoo. It's like my favorite style to tattoo. It's really fun. like bold, bright colors, all that
And you
stuff.
can combine. You can combine
Yeah.
everything. I think that's such a beautiful wisdom too, that there is no like you have to go only into the Reiki and maybe only tattoo flowers of life onto
Right.
people, but you can
No.
do both. There is no contradiction in it.
It's all about intention. And as long as the imagery is, you know, holds a good vibration, like, yeah, I'll use discernment with stuff. Like if somebody wants something that doesn't have a good energy to it, I'm going to try to talk them out of it or be like, you know, I'm not the artist for that. I'm not going to tattoo something that I feel is going to carry negativity with them. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Nicole, I thank you so much. That was so inspiring to me.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah,
This was
this was
great.
great.
I really appreciate being here.
Yeah. Have a good day. I know it's early still. Enjoy your time. Enjoy your
Thank you.
Christmas. Enjoy your holidays.
Yes, right back at you.
Yeah. Speak to you soon. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.